Hi friends, Jennifer Roman here from Lotus Designs, and today we are going to make a folk art rabbit painting, and this is inspired by the artist Rayner, who is a British illustrator and writer. So you can see I did this one with a more sort of rustic kind of quality. I used this really thick paper, and I actually wasn't super happy with I love the results. I actually am very happy with the sort of stylistic quality of it, but the paper was very hard to work with. It was a super absorbent paper, and when I initially got this paper, I bought it unlabeled in large sheets, and I thought that it was very thick watercolor paper, but I actually believe that it may be couching paper for paper making. So that was very interesting to work with because the paper was so absorbent that my applications of watercolor were immediately saturated into the paper, and I didn't get a whole lot of flow. Oh, here's Oliver. He wants a petting. So that was an interesting experiment, and I'm happy with the result, but I wouldn't recommend working with that paper. And I actually have two sheets. I'm going to move one aside so I don't ruin it. And then this one I did on white graphite paper, which is commonly known as drawing paper. It's a similar weight to copy paper or craft paper, and you would probably have a similar result as this if you have white construction paper at home. And with this one I used Sharpie. I actually think that using an oil pastel or a crayon for the outline is going to give more of the quality that Rayner's illustrations have, because she has this sort of loose stroke that's really lovely to see. So that's what I'm going to do for this one. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to try and do this upside down, so to your perspective, friends, so forgive any little mistakes. We're going to start with the rabbit nose, and to do that I will do a little V, and then I'm going to take that, then I'm going to add the rabbit cheeks or mouth area. So I'm going to make two rounded U's coming up to the top of the V, and from those I look at this rabbit face, and to me it seems kind of pear-shaped. So I'm going to start close to the bottom of the cheeks and make this round piece, and then come up a little narrower, and I'm going to repeat that on the other side. And then I'm going to add my two eyes, two circles. And I am using, these crayons are called Color Appeal crayons. They're made by Uli. I really like them. I've only had them a short while. To expose more of the crayon wax, you just peel a little bit of the paper tip off at a time. You can get a pretty good point by kind of sharpening the crayon by rubbing it on a piece of paper. They seem to lay nicely. I haven't tried them alone with watercolor resist, so we'll see. I can kind of go back over my line here because it does look a little light. And if I make a heavier, more concentrated line, I think that will give a nice crayon resist effect when we add the watercolors. And when I talk about crayon resist, we're just talking about the property of creating a mask on areas of the paper. So when we create a mask, we might use things like masking tape or wax from crayons or oil pastels, or we might use masking fluid, which is a liquid that you can paint on. So by creating that mask, what we're doing is making an area on the paper where the watercolor paint will not be absorbed into your paper. And that will keep your different colors from blending as well. So it's it's like a barrier to allow you to paint specific areas without blending or bleeding of the colors. So I'm going to come back above the eye, and I'm going to make a short line, and then I'm going to make a long curving line. And that's going to be my rabbit ear. And I'm going to do that on the other side. And if you want to have one ear maybe flop down, I think I will try that this time. So I'll do that. And then do the top of the rabbit's head and a line going up and then down for the one that's flopping. And this one will have go up to a point. Now I'm going to come back to the nose and create the bridge of the nose. It's going to come up to the ear. So I'm going to go out a little bit more and then in and then over, and I'm going to keep it going into the ear so that we have like the outer ear and the inner ear. And I'll do that on the other side. Go out, then in, then out again. And this time I'm actually going to reiterate that line or shape on both sides so that we have an inner and outer ear on both sides. Because this one was bent down, I thought it would look more appropriate to just have the one line. And you know, these instructions are intended to help artists who aren't comfortable just looking at an inspiration idea and doing their own steps. It is by no means a rule that you have to make your artwork in the order that I create my marks or to look like mine. Make it your own. Use the materials that you have on hand. You can do this with typical Crayola type crayons or colored pencils. You can use markers. You can do this with just pencil. I think that this sort of folk art quality of this style really lends itself to a variety of media. So now I'm going to add just a few little like whisker dots. And then the rabbit's shoulders or top of their body. So that's our basic drawing. Now, before I start with my watercolors, I like to prime my tray watercolors with a spray bottle so that I don't have to dip and drip. So that I don't have to dip my brush in the water and drip it on each and every color in my pan. This just kind of helps to saturate all the colors at once so that they are primed and ready for painting. And now that I've wet them, I can't lift them up. But this tray that I have here is just your standard Crayola brand watercolor tray. It's 8 colors. And this one is an unknown brand. I received this years ago and I didn't really start using it until recently, and I've kind of fallen in love with it. But I got it from FreeCycle, so I got it from a program, an online program where people give away items that they no longer want but don't want them to end up in a landfill or in the trash. So some generous stranger gave these watercolors to me and I've since fallen in love with them. So Catherine Rayner's work tends to be kind of muted. As a matter of fact, she wouldn't probably have done this blue background or this bright yellow. And I think these tones are more what she would typically use. So we'll start with that. I'm going to start with a darker brown at the tip of the nose. And again, you do not have to do the color choices that I'm doing. If you are painting but you don't have tray watercolors, you can do this with acrylic or tempera paints. You could also play with your liquid food coloring. You can make watercolor paint with liquid food coloring by adding a drop of food coloring to maybe a 1/4 cup or 1/8 of a cup of water until you get the intensity or saturation of color that you like. You could also try this with tea dyeing. Take a black tea bag and steep it in very little hot water. So maybe like a half a cup or even a third of a cup of water should get you a more intense color from your black tea bag. And certain teas that are herbal teas that maybe have hibiscus or rose hips in them, you can often get a rosy hue. So if you want to try the tea painting, I just suggest that you use less than a full cup of water so that you get a more richly saturated color. And of course you all know that the more water you use, the lighter your tone is going to be with your watercolor paints. And I really invite you to just kind of play and be free with this. Allow yourself to paint or create with no judgment. Just kind of play in the moment of making art. I'm going to purposely lead some areas darker than others, so I'm going to use more paint and pigment in some areas and more water and make it lighter or sheerer, if that's a word, in others. Now, I want to give these a very, very light tone. So I may actually take some of this paint and maybe put some over here so I can add some more water as well. And I am using watercolor paper right now. It's student grade. I think it's the Blick student grade. I'm not positive. I got it some time ago. But nothing fancy. And again, if you don't have watercolor paper, it's fine to use whatever you have on hand. You can use construction paper, drawing paper, copy paper. And honestly, I bet if you did this on brown craft paper, that would have a really cool effect. And I could even see doing it on like a crumpled paper and then smoothing that out, ironing it to get like a batik-like quality to the paper. So I am switching colors to this sort of tan color now for the inner ears and to go down into the face. So it's about the same level of darkness as the really lightened brown, but a little bit of a different shade that is probably super difficult for you to see. So you'll have to trust me on that, friends. Add a little water to help it flow on the paper. And you can see I'm getting right up to that black line and I don't seem to have much run over. So I'm having a good amount of resist from my Color Appeal crayons. They created a nice barrier. And sometimes it's fun to paint right over your black lines. You'll get tiny little bits of color in where you didn't get a full saturation from your crayon or oil pastel, and add a little more. of the darker brown in here. I'm kind of letting some of it pool up in places as well. What shall we do next? I'm gonna add a little bit, since I have some on my brush, I'm gonna go ahead and add some in here. And maybe a little bit of that tan. And I am going super light on this because I really just want it to not be bright white, but to be just kind of like a tawny, sort of off-white. And friends, if you're working on your dining room table like I am, please protect your table. You can put down some newspapers, or you can cut open a plastic trash bag. And if you do cut open a plastic trash bag, I definitely recommend that you fold it up when you're done and save it for the next time you want to make art, so that you're not just adding plastic waste. And also because then you don't have to cut open another one the next time you want to make art. You are almost ready to go. Just have to unfold it. I think we will add the black eyes and then see how we feel. I want to add a little bit more of this dark color here. Because I'm not really happy yet, I have to tell you. I feel like it's a little monochromatic. And I don't want it to look too crazy colorful, but I do want it to have a little bit of depth. And I'm just kind of very, very gently blending out the color so that it goes from darker in this area to lighter to give it a little bit of contrast and texture. And I'm not trying super hard to make my painting even either, friends. I'm really just kind of putting the different amounts of shading where I feel like they will make me happy. So it's not about shadow, what I'm doing. I'm not trying to create shadows. I'm really just creating texture where I feel it's pleasing to my eye. I'm gonna do the background before I do the eyes because the black will potentially bleed into some other areas and I want to avoid that if possible. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to do a combination of these two backgrounds. I'm going to add lots of color and then dilute it and then add more until I'm happy with what I see. But I'm going to stick with a palette of blues, greens, and maybe a little gray. So let's see what we get. And I'm going to also kind of blend with water between each color. So we don't get dark kind of speckles, like right there. Sort of bluish gray. Now, because I just blended a lot of that first blue with a fair amount of water, I have a good amount of water on my sheet right now to continue blending. Some areas are a little drier than others. And even more so with the background than with the rabbit's fur. I'm really not worrying too much about application placement, except of course to be careful not to paint all the way over my lines, because I do want my rabbit to not look. I want him to look naturally messy, but not like I was careless. Let's put it that way. So, of course, we're always going to do our best. But that might look different from you or me or somebody else. I'm going to add a little white, which is not a very bright white, so it gives a nice sort of gray tone. Somebody must have gotten some other colors in there. That's okay. That somebody could have been me, who knows? And then some greens. This one might be really bright, so we'll have to only do a little bit. I think that I am happy with the background now, so we're going to finish off with the black eyes. And I am scraping the excess water off of my brush because I want to have a relatively dry application of this. So just a tiny little bit of black on my brush, starting in the center. Now that still looks pretty wet. So since I'm using this very dirty drop cloth, I'm just going to use it to dry my brush. See if I can get a deeper, more saturated tone. That's better. And I'm kind of letting it pool a little bit inside the wax resist, because if I let it pool and then let it dry, I will have a deeper shade, the deep shade that I want. I'm also thinking I might add just a little bit of color into the black to give a little tonal richness. So, dry my brush so I don't add any water. And I have this very dark blue. Let's add a little bit of that. Just see what it does. And remember, you can make this any color that you want. Feel free to use crayons, colored pencils, or markers, whatever you have at home. And there we have it. A rabbit inspired by the artist and writer Rayner in Watercolor Resist. Friends, I hope you liked this video today. If you make one of these, please post a picture in the comments below. And also, if you're looking for more fantastic art content, go to the Darlington Art Center page or the Center for Creative Arts page on Facebook and like their pages. They have some wonderful teaching artists sharing their expertise with you all. And also, please feel free to hop over to Jewel and the Lotus Designs on Facebook and like my page as well. We appreciate it. And have a great day. Bye-bye.